What's going on, everybody? You're watching Unscripted. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about things that are very violent, graphic. I suggest if you have anything that makes you maybe queasy to see, or anything that might trigger you if you hear it, if it's too violent, that you might not want to watch this episode. But this is the trauma doctor that saved my life, Dr. Zierold. And I'm happy to have him on to talk about his time as a trauma doctor and his time as a military trauma surgeon as well. And again, this is an amazing episode. It's short, but sweet and graphic. So if you are prepared, it's Unscripted. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. And I'm here with Dr. Zierold. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Hoss. I'm looking forward to it, and just glad to see you sitting there on the other side of the microphone, looking healthy. And yeah, I'm excited. This will be fun.
Well, so for people, I thought it'd be interesting to show a night at the hospital that you work at. And you sent me a video from one of those nights. And I wanted to bring that up first, just to kind of give people an idea of what you do and what it looks like to be a trauma doctor. So, Matt, can you pull up that video that we got here? Okay, so what exactly are we looking at here?
So this is kind of a training video I wanted to make recently of a patient that unfortunately suffered a stab wound to the chest. He came in under CPR, and these are pretty rare cases if they actually survive and make it to the hospital. So what we actually did in the emergency department, it's called a ED thoracotomy, or emergency room thoracotomy, meaning we kind of cut open into the chest to figure out what's bleeding. When we got into the chest, noticed that the knife had actually penetrated the ventricle. The heart didn't have any blood in it, and that's kind of what you're seeing there.
So so that's the heart that you're like pulsating in your hands there.
Yeah, it's kind of like, that's called internal CPR. So you kind of put your thumb on the top of the heart and your hand below it, and you squeeze it, hoping that you can get blood going again. And unfortunately, kind of at the top there, I had repaired most of the laceration, but it was still kind of bleeding. And so we had to do a little bit more work. I was able to get him up to the operating room, and we did some more work to try to get this thing to stop bleeding and make sure his heart worked. So,
Matt, can you bring me back, please? Sorry, go ahead. Keep going, Dr. C.
Yeah, these things always happen in the middle of the night. So it was, it's one of those, anytime you get a trauma call at like 2 or 3 a.m., it's never going to be good. So it's kind of what the team experienced last night. And yeah, it was a crazy case.
So you got so you get a call. Are you on call? Like, are you at home, or are you at the hospital at this point?
We're at the hospital. Our group.
You're at the hospital.
Yeah, a lot of trauma centers, the trauma doctors are at home, and the ED doctors, the emergency room doctors, will kind of start stuff. And if it's beyond them, they give a call, and then you come in. But we've always felt at our trauma center that, having us in-house 24/7, 365 is important. I think it helps our results. So we kind of take most of the trauma call and get down to the ER immediately. Within, 3 to 5 minutes, we're present, usually present before the patients arrive. And I think that definitely improves our results of patient outcomes.
So walk me through this. So you're in-house, you get the call that this person's coming in with a stab wound to the chest?
Correct. Yeah.
Does it tell you, like, that's all you know? Do you know any more than that?
The only thing typically what you hear is the medics will call in and say, "We're coming in." I knew that this patient was under CPR, which is never a good sign.
Yeah.
And that, that basically means he doesn't have blood pressure. And there was some kind of a stab wound to the chest. It could have been, anywhere on the back, the front. You don't really know, so you're kind of like expecting the worst. Certainly, things in the front part of the chest, when you get stabbed in the front part of the chest, those tend to be the worst. So we
Yeah.
kind of were preparing for the worst, assuming that's kind of where it happened. And in fact, that's where it was.
So when the patient comes in, you get him on the table, you see that it's to the chest and you see it's to the heart area. Now you have to cut it open further to see where it's hit. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's it's a brutal procedure.
Go ahead and walk me through it,
So
if you
basically,
don't mind.
the patient's laying flat, and you take a knife, a big old what we call a big 10 blade. It's the biggest scalpel that you have, and you go about couple centimeters below the nipple, right at the sternum, and you literally just cut down through all the skin and the muscle all the way to the bed. You get down to where you can see the ribs, and you take a pair of scissors and cut through the ribs, and then put your hands in there and spread it. And then you can kind of see the lung and the heart, and put a retractor in to kind of hold it all open.
Right.
And then you kind of try to figure out where this stab wound went. This one particular went kind of through the lung and then into the heart. Um, I think in the past I think I'm doing this like 28 years. I've maybe done 12 to 13 of these. This one was by far the biggest laceration to the heart. I'm actually surprised that he survived long enough to get to the hospital, because it was a
Okay.
big wound. I could put 3 fingers inside the
Wow.
heart. So it was big.
So
It was
did you
bleeding.
know how do you know to keep sorry, if any of these questions are stupid, I apologize ahead of time. How do you know
Nothing, nothing stupid. No.
how do you know to try if you get a guy there and you see that there's this like 3 finger deep laceration in his heart, how do you know to keep trying? Or is it just because there's still a beat, or is that why you keep trying?
Yeah, and for him, what you do at this procedure is you kind of go in, you find the heart, and you can actually see it if it's beating,
Yeah.
because you couldn't feel a pulse, but
Right.
if the heart's still beating and you can actually see it beating, then that's when I go for it, and
Okay.
try to fix the hole. The priority is fix the hole, fill the heart up with blood, get blood into their veins, get it to start pumping blood again. Initially, you kind of have to give CPR internally. In
Mhm.
this particular patient, the heart was just empty. I was able to get enough, put a special central line in, and got enough blood into him where the heart started to fill up, did some CPR, started to get a beat back. And then it went into what this rhythm we call fibrillation, like atrial or ventricular fibrillation, which is a kind of a deadly rhythm. So
Okay.
instead of, the shock pads that you put on like this, they have these little paddles that you can put right on the heart. And I put those in and hit it, and the damn thing started beating again. I'm like, fuck it, let's get to the OR and see what we can do.
Okay. So hold on. So like take me back a minute. So you filled it with blood, you got a pulse, but then there was a bad rhythm of that pulse. So then what do you do to get it back on track? Or let me ask you this. Did that patient survive?
Unfortunately, he didn't. Um,
Okay.
he ended up, I think it was just physiologic exhaustion. It was just too much work for the heart. The other thing I think happened with him was he, this particular patient, the stab wound actually transected some of the blood vessels in the heart that that provide blood to the heart, and
Okay.
those are really small vessels. The cardiothoracic surgeons do bypass procedures for them in really controlled settings, and I think that's kind of what happened is he transected those or cut those vessels in half, and he wasn't getting blood to half of his heart, and it finally
Okay.
just kind of gave out.
What is that like for you? I've had, so been, I've had a bunch of muscle tears and I've seen different doctors and I've had different surgeries, and there's some doctors who care and some doctors who don't care. And, well, I shouldn't say don't care. That's not fair. Some doctors have a good bedside manner. Some doctors don't. but nobody ever looks at it from, like, your side of the table. So, like, how does that impact you when someone comes in like that and you're trying to save them and then you can't save them? Is that hard to go home at night after that?
You know, to be honest, perfectly honest, I think, it doesn't affect me as much as it used to when I was younger. Um, it it certainly feels like a personal failure, and this may sound kind of harsh, but, the average kinda lifespan of a trauma surgeon before they just get burned out in this country is about 12 years. And, you just get so many of these cases, and you just kinda start to get this almost like compassion fatigue,
Yeah.
with these cases. And, it's tough when you talk to the family, you kinda get a little bit of pangs of emotion with it, but that can really bring you down over time. And you've got to find a balance to where you can, kind of feel the feeling in the moment, certainly process it with the team. Some of these young techs and nurses that are in the ER, you have to remember that this may be their first time they've saw this, so you can't really act that way around them. You've got to kind of check in with them, make sure they're doing okay.
Mhm.
But over time, I think you kind of become numb to it, to be honest. And you know, that's a dangerous place to get. You can become, a little bit too numb,
Yeah.
and that's when it's time to hang it up. So,
If you get
uh,
numb to something like that, how do you if you've trained yourself to be numb to something that's so traumatic, how do you like, how does the rest of your life look? Like, are you still able to be up and down when you need to be, or is it like does it kinda make everything else gray?
yeah, it's a struggle if you don't work on it every day and come up with some kind of peace and something bigger than me.
Yeah,
For me, it's my wife, my ranch. I live away from a lot of people. I have my horses. I have a little cow that I play with, and I do some little hobbies that take my mind off things, and certainly have to kind of dive in. Today after this, I'll probably take a nap and get up and probably just lounge around and think about it a little bit.
yeah,
And then just try to hang out with the horses. Really, they kind of help me more than anything, to be honest. And
sure.
certainly I sit down and talk about it with my wife. She was a trauma nurse, so she understands it. Get through it, make dinner, watch some TV, and wake up the next day and start it again.
When you train yourself to a lot of people talk about, like, feel the feeling and then move past it, right? Like, that what you described, people use that all the time in all different sorts of, like, professions. And, when you feel the feeling and move past it, does it still pop up every once in a while? Like, do you still, like, get glimpses of those things?
Yeah, certainly. And you'll have similar cases come up, and it'll remind you of that case. The key to that, and full disclosure, I've been to therapists, especially after doing some combat tours. I really needed some
Mhm.
professional help, and really hard to admit that. Got myself in a really dark place, couldn't get myself out of it. Got some help, and really that type of therapy was teaching you how to kind of get back that if you have a feeling, how how does that make you think? Like, what are you thinking about that feeling? And there's a disconnect with that, and it's
Right.
called cognitive processing. And some of those feelings that you have in these stressful situations, the thoughts that you have don't really match up with them, and that can just drive you down and get you farther and farther away from who you need to be and what you need to do. So you really have to kind of sit there with the feeling. You have to allow the feeling to we can't help how we feel.
Yeah.
You can't help how you feel. That's a natural chemical neurologic response in our brain, but you can control how you think. and that takes effort. Some people it's easier than others, but for me, after the wars, it was really hard, and I had to really train my brain how to feel the feeling and then try to train my thoughts to kind of match that in a healthy way.
It's
And I
funny.
do that still to this day.
Yeah,
It's just a skill you have to use.
it's funny. I come from the bodybuilding world, obviously, and we're always talking about getting past things and things being in a dark place, and like these sayings like always arise, and we forget there's people out like you out there, like actually, maybe in a dark place because of all the things you've experienced. And I kind of wanted to talk about your tours, which is one of the main reasons I want to have you on, because I'm fascinated by all things military. Um, can you explain to me, how'd you get into doing military, being a doctor in the military?
I'll try to keep it short. Basically, came from a pretty blue collar family. Dad was a copper miner. We didn't have a lot of money. Um, I really, you know, was kind of getting good grades early on in school. Really wanted to go farther. Knew I wasn't gonna be able to pay for college. My sister, who's 4 years older, she got the hell out of there and joined the military. And she got put into kind of the medical service corps. She's about 5 years older than me. And after she graduated basic training, I was still in junior high. And we went and visited her in Texas at her base at her first job. And I remember walking into her, they'd had a little tour and you could go into where she was working in her job site. And I remember walking in there and seeing her doctor that she was working for, her boss. He was a captain, he was a cardiologist. And to this day, I just remember him being in uniform and having that rank on his shoulder, and he just looked bigger than life. I mean, I felt like this little tiny kid in a room just looking at this huge, human specimen that was just so in control and so confident and so, serving others and into the mission. And that really stuck with me. And, he kind of talked to me and I told him, yeah, I'd really like to join the military. And he said, you should, if you really want to do that, you should become an officer and try to go to the Air Force Academy for undergrad and see where that takes you. It's not the best route to become a doctor, but most of the people go to the academy want to become a pilot. But that's one way to do it. And so I in high school, early on in high school, I really put my mind to it and, applied, didn't think I'd have a shot in hell because they don't take very many people at the academy. And somehow, by the grace of God, I got accepted and it was kind of over from there.
So you got accepted into the Air Force.
Air Force Academy. Yeah. It's kind of like I don't know if you know what West Point is or the U.S.
I've
Naval
heard of it.
Academy.
Yeah.
That's the Air Force version in Colorado Springs, four-year college. And
O- Okay.
so I went through that and then
Yeah.
on to med school.
So you did that. You went to med school. You became a doctor, and then you have to go. You have to actually serve in the military at that point. Then.
Yeah. So after you graduate med school, you go into training, surgical training. I was accepted to become a surgeon. I didn't want to be anything else at that point. After through my med school years, rotating on some of these surgical rotations, I knew that was for me. And so surgical training, 6 years, and you're a resident. You kind of work under what we call attending doctors, and you're kind of a trainee, and you get through that 6 years of training and then you take, different tests and boards. And once you pass all those, you're officially a surgeon. And then, you serve in the military.
Okay. So they send you to Afghanistan.
So interestingly, at about that time, um, we went to war and I was a
Yeah.
brand new surgeon. And it was Iraq the first. And I was 9 months out of training. Most surgeons out of training are just like fixing little hernias or taking out an appendix or doing simple
Right.
shit like that. Next thing I know, the fucking captain called me and was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, you got 3 weeks to prepare. You're going to northern Iraq as a trauma surgeon." I'm like, "Oh, God damn, I'm not a trauma surgeon. I mean, that takes another 2 or 3 years of training." So
Right.
off I went to Iraq and completely unprepared. Really difficult situation. dealt with a lot of stuff that, never thought the human body could even endure. Um,
Anything you wanna touch on through that? And any examples you can think of? And not that I wanna take you back into, like, a bad place or anything like that, I just
no,
this
it's
stuff's fascinating to a lot of people, right? Like, it's
yeah.
crazy to hear and we don't you generally, like how many people do you think in their life would come across someone like you that they actually get to ask these questions? You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty crazy 'cause I'm sure there's a lot of people that come across doctors all the time, but, like, never somebody that served in the military, never somebody that served as a trauma surgeon in a war, and never somebody that's gonna sit down and actually answer some of these questions. So, I don't wanna take you to a bad place. I'm just curious, you're a Desert Storm, you're a young kid, you are a young man, you just, kinda graduated. What are you seeing, and is it freaking you out?
Yeah, I guess I'll preface this by uh saying that, after the 3 deployments, I kind of hit a pretty dark place. What I went through certainly wasn't what the soldiers went through. Those are the real heroes of the war. I just took care of them, but seeing them be injured and trying to save them and sometimes failing and um having to live with that kind of, got me in that bad place. And part of that bad place was I was obsessed with trying to relive it, trying to solve it, trying to figure out what I could have done different. I'd read every war book that I could find. I'd watch every war movie that I could find, and I went on a lecture circuit and was talking about it nonstop, and it was just bringing me farther and farther down. And the in the therapy I was in, they finally said, "That's enough. You're done. You can't. I don't want you talking about it anymore." And so I kind of got off that train and just put it all behind me, and put it all behind me. Didn't really talk about it much anymore. But I think it's been long enough that I'm able to kind of talk about it. There's some of it that I literally, when I think about it, I can't remember. There's bits and pieces, and I don't think me trying to remember is a healthy thing. But
Yeah,
there was one particular case in when I went to Iraq. It was a couple weeks after I got there, and Sergeant W um, came in, and it was kind of my one of my first really big traumas. It was IED. He had a bilateral amputation, blast injury to the lung, to the face, really sick. Um, had to put tubes in the chest, kind of like, you that kind of tube that you had in your chest, had to put them on
yeah,
both sides. And beyond that, I really didn't know what to do to get his blood pressure higher. I just, I made some mistakes. At the time, I didn't know they were mistakes. And I really thought that this guy could have survived, and he didn't.
yeah,
And, there's I think I've logged I can tell you 4,862 soldiers that I took care of. Some of them were much sicker than Sergeant W. But that case really burned me, and it drove me, um, because I had to figure out where I screwed up, and I knew I needed more training. So when I was in Iraq, I started calling back home. We didn't have cell phones. There wasn't like computers or
yeah,
email and that sort of thing. And I got a hold of UC Davis, the big level 1 trauma center here. And I was like, look, I'm coming back. I'll be back in 2 months. You got to accept me into your fellowship and train me. Cause,
mhm,
this is fucked up. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I got to come back and fix this shit.
right.
And, they were nice enough to accept me, and I went back to training, and then, I deployed a couple more times. But,
Can I interrupt
that
you for
that
1 sec?
particular case in Iraq was the one that really stuck with me.
Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't. You know what? I apologize. I just was you were intent on going back? Was that, like, your main, like, you really wanted to, like, get home, learn more, and go back? Was that your main kinda purpose in life at that point?
Yeah, to a sickness.
Okay.
at this point, I know it was too a sickness, completely obsessed. It really, I was married at the time, married my high school sweetheart. Within 2 months of me being back, it's it's so fucked up. I was working at several different hospitals, trying to get any experience I could. I'd leave on a Thursday, come home the following Tuesday, sleeping in my truck. And I remember I left, one Thursday, didn't come home until the next Wednesday, and she was gone. And I
Wow.
had no idea when she left. And that was it. And, I remember thinking at the time, wow, this is horrific. I just lost my wife. And that feeling lasted for about 2 hours. And this is someone I'd been married to for like 15 years. And, I immediately said, I got to go to work tonight. Going to get some sleep, going to eat and get back to work. So, it kind of destroyed my life a little bit. I was just so obsessed with learning, and there's a lot more to it in that time frame, but that's just an example of how obsessed I was with getting back.
Did you fix things before you went back for your second tour? Like, did you get back with your wife before you went back for your second tour?
No, no. And, I had really nice discussions with her. We're still, really good friends. She went back home. She married my high school nemesis. Fucker. Guy named Merritt.
Go figure. Fucking Merritt.
Fucking hated
Fuck that
Merritt.
guy.
Of all the fucking people she'd go back to, it's Merritt.
Merritt.
It fucking
Oh, he's
pissed
named
me off.
Merritt. Fuck that guy.
Fuck Merritt. Anyway, hopefully Merritt's not watching this.
Yeah,
Well,
hopefully
hopefully he
not.
is. Fuck it, man. Motherfucker.
I hope he
Here,
is
let me
watching.
put
Fuck
my
you, Merritt. So I
No,
was hoping.
she basically said, "Look, you're going back, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am. I got to fix this. I don't know how long it's going to take, and you deserve a better life." And I, we just kind of kept it amicable, and that was it.
Okay. I was hoping. I don't know why I was hoping, but I was hoping that was going to be like, yeah, we got back together and we're still together to this day. It turned out to be Merrick popped up,
That's what the book.
or Merritt.
If the fiction book I write,
The
that's what
fiction
it would say. But it didn't happen that way.
That's okay. It doesn't matter. You guys seem to have a great life, anyways. So, if we can continue the story, so you go back. Do you start to make some of the corrections and start to feel better about how you're operating at this point?
Yeah. I don't want to come across as bragging, because I think
Well,
anybody in this situation that's put in these scenarios, any surgeon that has the will to keep going could have done this. So I don't
sure.
think it was just me by any means. There's a lot of surgeons, but I got tagged to be what's called the trauma czar for Afghanistan during the surge, the Obama. So we kind
Really?
of ramped down on Iraq. Obama came in and said, we got to wipe this war up, send in 50,000 Marines, clean out Kandahar, clean out Panjshir, and, oh, by the way, send a couple extra team of surgeons. You're in charge. So I was kind of it's called the trauma czar, but I was the director of combat trauma operations for the entire country, all NATO troops, American troops. So anybody NATO that was injured, NATO Americans that were injured, had to come through me. I had to see them, either operate on them or have one of my partners operate on them, and then I gave them the get go that they could go to launch school. So it was a big, big responsibility, and it took a couple years of training to get ready for that. And I fucking nailed it. I fucking nailed it. And
Can that's got to be more than just medical training, though. Like, did you have to take in? You must have had to take like operations training and all of that to be able to deal with that whole like organism. You know what I
yeah, there
mean?
was a lot. I worked with the PJs, pararescue troops. I got in with them here in stateside. Those are the guys that rescue the special ops guys that are in trouble. Those are the guys that are floating in the fucking Black Hawk out here as the SEALs were raiding when they were getting
Yes.
Osama.
Right.
You don't hear about those guys. They're 20 minutes out, ready to go in. So I
Right.
spent a lot of time with them up in the hills in Tahoe, training with them, doing a lot of animal labs, a lot of rescue labs, a lot of operations, a lot of leadership stuff. Just did everything I could to prepare for it. And I hit the ground and I was a machine. I was not going to fuck this up. And had a really good team. It wasn't just me. When you're in charge of something like that, the success is the team. The failure
Yeah.
is me. The failures are me. The
Yeah.
success is the team. And that's kind of the approach I took.
Yeah. No, that's wild. So you go back and you dominate the whole thing on the way back, and then the Iraq War ends. How long after that?
The Iraq War was kind of um, settling down. They were kind of starting to pull out when I got sent to Afghanistan. There were still a couple surgeons there. And in fact, I was getting hammered so much. One of the buddies I went to med school with was kind of cleaning up in Iraq, picking things up. Really wasn't much going on. And I called Central Command and said, "Hey, can you send him down here for the rest of his tour?" And
Mhm.
so he was a buddy I went to the academy and med school with, and he came down and was one of the surgeons with me. So kind of all the resources started going to Afghanistan at that point. So we were really built up. We had a good team there in Bagram.
Again, forgive me for any stupid stupid questions. The You're not do you operate on any Afghanis at this point? Are you helping any Afghani people, any Afghani security, police, whatever, or is it just American soldiers?
Yeah, we operated on a lot of Afghani police, security police, the locals. The locals took a big hit. They, some of the shit was just fucking nasty. Hoss. It was Taliban would, often go into a village, round up the women, shoot them all in the stomach, put them in the back of a truck, drive them to the base, throw them over the fence, and suddenly you have, 8 women with gunshot wounds. They like to do it at weddings.
Oh,
Um,
no.
One particular situation I remember, they dumped like 7 women, killed all the men, shot them in the head, shot all the women in the abdomen, dumped them off. The one woman, local village woman, was pregnant, shot her through the uterus, killed the baby, had to operate on both. Um, a lot of times they go in and take I don't know how much you want to know this.
Oh, I'm open. I'm open. And listen, this is, I mean, for people listening, we've already given a warning that it's going to be graphic. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they can watch as long as they want to, but I'm personally interested.
So one of the things that really got me with operating on some of the locals is, to be a little girl in Afghanistan was tough. And a lot of them one of the things they'd like to do to go in and intimidate, the village or turn them to their will is they'd get the little girls and, um,
We don't have to talk about it if it's too much, man.
no, it's good. So they would, pour kerosene on them and, light them on fire, throw them off the roof. They'd come in all broken, burned. Um, those were kind of the toughest cases that um, really kind of hurt that, you kind of in the moment, while I was there, it didn't affect me because I was just
Mhm.
doing everything I could. But I think when I got home from this, and that, there's a lot more stuff that happened, but when I got home from this, you really lost any hope for humanity.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
can
that the
imagine.
humans could do this to each other was just, it was just horrifying. And, I don't think any sane human should have to ever see anything like that or certainly deal with anything like that because it's otherworldly, just pure evil.
So basically, I think what you're telling me is everything that I'm seeing in the movies. Like when I watch a movie like Lone Survivor, or I'm watching some of these military movies, it's got some real real life, stories behind it that have actually happened. And you're maybe just saying worse, if anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff they toned down for it, for Hollywood, but yeah, some of this stuff was just is just gruesome. and
S
tough to deal with.
um, I didn't know it was a policy of the American military to take care of civilians. That's kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was, when we go in, especially at the end of the Iraq War, there was a lot of humanitarian aid. So you kind of want to win the hearts of the people. So you would do a lot of elective surgery and that sort of thing. We didn't have time for that in Afghanistan. And we were, you know, responsible a lot for, villages getting hit or maybe not protecting them. So we took it on ourselves to say, we got to help these people. We got to show them that we're here to help. And so there was a lot. I took care of Taliban. Um,
You did.
yeah, yeah,
So, are you still there?
yeah,
Even so even the enemy, you guys were taking care of.
yeah. We took care of the enemy, but yeah, there are some interesting stories with that. Is they sometimes the Americans really wouldn't, or NATO really wouldn't hit the kill shot. They'd get them in the leg and blow half their leg off, make sure they're alive. They'd come to me. Never actually talked about this in public, but anyway, they would come to me. I'd get them patched up. Suddenly, some spooks would come in and take them away, and then 2 weeks later they'd come back and all their wounds were infected, and they'd take them away again and come back and they're all infected. So I can only imagine what they were doing to them or trying to figure out from them, but it was pretty dirty on both sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, we took care of a lot of the Taliban, and interestingly, a lot of the enemy Taliban. There was one kid in particular that had that story. He got they shot him in the leg. They brought him in. He had a vascular injury. We fixed the vascular injury, or blood vessel injury to his leg. Fixed his femur. Got him back to normal, and I kind of started talking to him, and essentially, the Taliban offered him $500, and if he would take out a convoy, and he was from Kazakhstan. And he was barely making it in life, and his family had no allegiance to the Taliban. It's just the $500 was going to change his life, and he took it and went there and hit one of the convoys. They figured out who he was. They went and shot him in the leg, and they took him back, interrogated him, and realized he really wasn't a big enemy threat. And we were able to get him back to Kazakhstan. But there was a lot of that going on too, which was kind of unnerving. I mean, he ended up being a nice kid. I ended up talking to him quite a bit. He was actually a kickboxer. He had dreams of representing his country in the Olympics as a kickboxer, and it was just horrific human tragedy type stuff it was just horrible.
How many times did you make over the course? Can't say over the course of your career because it's probably gonna be so many, but how often when you were in, a military situation as a trauma surgeon, did you develop relationships with any of your, um anybody you worked on?
That's a really good question, and it's funny that you asked that, because that really was the crux of what broke me when I got home. Um, the difference, you know, eh, I'll be honest with you, Haas. It's kind of why I grabbed onto you so much. I don't want to make this too personal about you, but
It's okay.
in your situation, your surgery, the type of person you are, the warrior, the fighter that you were, um, it it really reminded me of some of the soldiers I took care of. And one of the things that I couldn't do in Afghanistan is I only had them for 72 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 days. They never woke up, and sometimes I didn't even know their name. All I saw was their name tag,
Mhm.
and then they went off, and I never knew what happened to them. So did all this work on them. They're gone. Couldn't really have the time to track them. Never figured out what happened to them. So it just left this huge black void in my mind that I just started filling up with shit.
Yeah.
And And it just kept building and building. And the longer I was home, the more I tried to think about it. And that was one of the reasons I just kept reading every book I could read about war, watching every movie, trying to fill in the blanks. What happened in this battle to bring these guys here?
Yeah.
What happened when they got back home, and were they able to get their sensation back in their legs, or were they able to get a prosthetic and walk again? So
Right.
yeah, that black void was really difficult. And I think that was the impetus of the kind of the combat stress disorder I was, essentially diagnosed with, and got treatment for.
So you brought up our situation. So I have to be honest with you. I've never had a doctor care as much as you do about my recovery. I guess I understand a little bit more now why, but you've had how many hundreds come through your current facility, for example? I just don't I guess I just don't know. Is it the bodybuilding connection? Is it, there's gotta be something more, I think. And I
Well,
guess I'm asking for my own I guess I'm asking personally now is like, what is it
I
that
think,
makes you care?
there's y- y- you care about every patient, right? That's what I'm supposed to say. They care the same amount about every patient. They're going to get the same care from me, and they do. They get the same effort from me. But, like we started this conversation, you kind of have to be guarded about how much
Mm,
emotion or connection you do to patients. If you do it too much, you're going to get burned because things just aren't going to work out and you're going to run out of steam. So it is every once in a while, somebody will come along, a patient will come along that you can just see the fight. You can see the family. I could see the expression on Summer's face. I could see all of your friends and family coming in and out of the room. I could see you fighting like a motherfucker on that vent to survive it. And yeah, it hit me. It hit me in the chest. And I was just like, you know what? This motherfucker is going to make it. He's going to do good. I don't care. I'm putting it out in the universe. And yeah, I just grabbed onto it because sometimes I need to see a success story in order for me to get up tomorrow and to keep doing this shit. I need to see that for me as well. And yeah, some of it was the bodybuilding connection. I was a, I big bodybuilding fan in the 80s, and but more of it was I could just see you were a fighter. And there's a lot of my patients in the trauma world that I'm not judging by any means, but a lot of it's self-inflicted stuff. A lot of it's kind of the underserved population, and they don't want to fight. They just kind of give up. And
yeah.
I didn't see that in you. And yeah, I just grabbed onto it. And
Um, I wanna talk a little bit about that. So, can you walk me through what the phone call is like? Like, you get the phone call, motorcycle crash. What do they tell you?
so basically, motorcycle crash. In your particular case, high speed motorcycle crash, significant chest wall trauma, difficulty breathing. Appeared that he had a flail chest, and I can explain all this stuff to you. But had to decompress the chest in the field, which essentially means you had significant chest wall trauma and you punctured your lung. It was collapsed. They tried to re-expand it with a needle, and that blood pressure was what we call soft, or it was a little bit low, so you may be bleeding. And then it's a guessing game and just kind of a waiting game. So really, you just kind of get a general idea of what the accident was, a general idea of what they did to you in the field. And once you've been doing this long enough, you kind of start to develop these patterns. Like, okay, this is what we're worried about. Big time chest. Did he get his spleen? Did he hit his head? Has he got spinal injuries? Those, and all that stuff starts to run through your head, and you get down there with the team and you start getting prepared. And you know it's certainly not just me, it's an entire team. The respiratory therapists are there, the labs there, the x-rays there, and then that's who I kind of involve, and we work as a team to get it figured out as quick as possible to get you through the life-threatening injuries and get you either to the operating room, or if you need a surgery, or get you to the ICU and start doing some of the critical care stuff.
Okay, so I show up. What's the first thing you guys end up doing then? How do you save my life?
So when you first show up, you determine if you have an airway or not, meaning can you breathe on your own or not? And um, you weren't really able to breathe on your own very well. So the trauma to the chest was significant enough that we had to put you on a breathing machine, the life support machine. So that's the first step. You got to be able to oxygenate the lungs, get oxygen to the blood, um, and kind of take over breathing and sedate you, and so we can kind of slow things down and get it figured out what's going on with you. The second thing you immediately after you get the airway established is, are you bleeding anywhere? And there's certain things that we go through, exams, x-rays, ultrasounds, CT scans. And if you're bleeding, how do we stop it? And in your case, your lung had been punctured. It was collapsed, severely bruised. There was some blood on the outside of the lung that was collecting and starting to kind of press on the lung. So instead of just like in that video you saw, instead of opening it up, short of that, we can put a tube in there and drain some of that air, drain some of that blood, and hope that the lung kind of expands. And in your case, it did.
Hmm.
And then we take you to the CAT scanner. You're completely sedated at this point, and we kind of do a head to toe 3-dimensional x-ray to see where all the injuries are. In your case, you had some spinal injuries. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to talk about your injuries. It's
Yeah,
kind of,
I'm open.
yeah, you had some spinal injuries. We didn't exactly know if it was affecting your spinal cord or if you were gonna, you seemed to be moving your legs, so that was a good sign. You seemed to be moving your arms, that was a good sign, or at least your hands. The lung had kind of come up, but it was severely bruised, and it was just really difficult to oxygenate you, meaning it was really difficult to get oxygen in your lungs. They're very full of blood, and they just weren't
Mhm.
accepting oxygen. So at that point, you didn't need any major surgeries, in your abdomen. Thankfully, you didn't injure anything. You had some fractures in your arms that, weren't life threatening at that point. Those things get splints. And we take you up to the intensive care unit and start doing what we can to stabilize your lungs and your heart.
Okay.
And that's kind of what we did for you.
So you guys stabilized me, and I noticed you checked in on me. I mean, did you have to check in on me once a day, or I don't know how often. I mean, I was asleep for the first week, so I don't know how often you were in there.
Yeah, I mean, we round every morning, so we do rounds, but we're always up there. So we're always kind of looking in on you, looking at all the labs that we're getting, looking at all the x-rays. The nurses are constantly reporting to us that, hey, we want to make this change. They'll report back and say, well, that change didn't really work. So we come back to the bedside frequently and try to titrate things to make it better. The breathing machine, the blood pressure medicines. So it's a kind of a constant thing in the ICU. It's kind of like around the clock. There's a surgeon, maybe not right at the bedside, you maybe with another patient, but you're in constant communication with the nurses of what's happening with the interventions that we had ordered to happen. Um,
I felt like I developed a pretty good relationship with everybody in the trauma center or in the trauma unit. Is that normal?
for that unit, yes, that's a very
Yeah.
high powered unit. That I mean, I've worked at a lot of different trauma centers. I've worked at the downtown big level 1 trauma center, and this particular unit, the nurses, the respiratory therapists, the lab, the x-ray, they are all by far kind of the best crew in Northern California. That TNI is very tight. Our results from that unit are, very high nationally,
Mhm.
nationally ranked very high for outcomes. And yeah, they get pretty personal with the patients, and they really attach. If you go back in their break room, in fact, they have all over their wall, they have just tons of pictures and notes about all the different patients that have been there. And then a lot of patients come back. I know you did, came back to say hi, and they fucking love it. And
Yeah.
it's so, yeah, it's not abnormal at our hospital. I think it's a little bit more at our hospital than other hospitals I've worked at, but I think it's a special place. I think you landed in the right spot.
Yeah, I came back to say bye to everybody before I took off. It was, had a weird experience when I left that place. I was there for I don't know how long I was there, a month, maybe more.
A little bit
And,
more, yeah.
and, it's like I felt like I didn't wanna leave, but I did. This is fucking it was weird. And then
Yeah.
I felt like I had to go back to say bye to everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's a
Um,
good thing to do. I'm glad you did it.
yeah, so the question I have is, what do you do with the people that don't wanna fight? I mean, I know they get the same kind of care. I know they get they obviously you're gonna try your hardest for them, but, like, what do you do? What do you do with the patient that's just not doing the things that you guys are asking him to do, doesn't wanna put in the effort, doesn't wanna put in the time? How do you save that person?
Yeah, I think that's kinda where the art of medicine comes in. I think the older you get, you know, we kinda talked about maybe you get a little bit of compassion fatigue. At that point, the way I deal with it is it becomes personal for me. If the patient fails, I fail. So I have to kinda make it my failure. It's no longer their failure, it's my failure. And I really um, push them to do things they don't wanna do. Take it to the extreme, to the point where, they basically tell you, "I'm done,"
Yeah.
and then you kinda have to honor their wishes. But there it's a good question, because it can be very frustrating. You go up there and they're just not doing what you're asking them, and they're just, each day getting a little bit worse. But for me personally, I just kind of make that my personal failure, and that's what keeps me going to the bedside instead of giving up on them. If I give up on them, I'm giving up on myself. Um,
Yeah.
is kind of the attitude you have to take.
Is it fair to say that you're kinda and I don't know if I have this mistaken, if it's just my own the way I view it, but are you kinda the head of that unit there?
I'm one of the senior surgeons. I've been there for quite a while. A couple of the other surgeons I've been with there for multiple years. So, we have a boss, Dr. Pearlstein. He's kind of the in charge of everything. He's always been 3 or 4 years ahead of me. I've been with him my entire career.
Okay.
Incredible surgeon. Not being biased, this is actually other people's opinions. Probably one of the best trauma surgeons in the country. He was in Iraq as well. Um, Big guy, played football in Nebraska. Doesn't fuck around, knows his shit. So he's kind of the leader of the group. But yeah, I'm one of the senior guys there that's been there for quite a while.
You had some, bodybuilding experience in your life. You wanna Matt, you wanna pull up that photo of,
I was so excited to show you this, Haas. I don't know why.
Dr.
I know you were gonna laugh, but fuck it.
No, I
I have a
didn't
cool
laugh at all.
story with it though.
You're what, 6 you said you were 16 here? These
I was
photos?
16.
That's good for 16, man. What do you I don't know, there's nothing to laugh at. I don't
I
know,
didn't
it's
have any
great.
gear, but
You
yeah,
is that's 100% natty?
100% natty. Yeah. It was really cool. Like, I was a wrestler, and our wrestling coach, he was actually he actually sparred with Dan Gable back in the day,
Okay.
out of Iowa State. So big time dude,
Yeah.
great coach. And when he came to coach in Titters, we had a really good wrestling team. This was one of the better teams in the state, but he really pushed us in the off season. Those guys that are on varsity, we didn't do any other sports, that, you cut weight, you get down to a weight, and then season's over and you just eat like shit, gain a bunch of fat, and then you cut weight
Yeah.
the next season. So he was really big on us hitting the gym. So about
Okay.
15 years before this event, he kind of started this weight training program, met a guy, owned the big gym in Salt Lake, where all the big guys hung out, worked out. He got us all memberships, and in the off season, we were required to go up there and work out. And he set up this high school bodybuilding competition.
That's awesome.
And at first, it was just kind of a little thing. It was just kind of between the wrestlers. But over the years, it started getting bigger and bigger, and kind of got some sponsors. By the time I was there, it was, it would fill an auditorium of like 1,200 people.
That's amazing. That's
And one of the judges, and I've tried to look this up. I lost my brochure about the competition. I lost the brochure. One of the judges, and he was the guest poser, and then he judged. He won the Emerald Cup.
okay. That's still around, I
Um,
think.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so big dude.
Yeah. Well, that's a big show to win.
Yeah, he was legit. So, I mean, we pulled a lot of people from the community in, and, other schools were trying to get involved, but it was a pretty big event. And I put about 10 months of training in, just worked my butt off. Back then there's no internet.
Yeah.
All you had was Muscle Fitness. And then I remember, like, in 1984, Flex magazine came out.
That's right.
And so now I had two sources, and I was, I'd get it and fucking read every article, and like, how do you peak your biceps? And I'd, you
Is
know,
it is it weird for a medical doctor, trauma surgeon, is it weird to be involved or interested in a sport that's kinda like, these guys are all using steroids and all that. Does that matter to you? You just didn't bother you, you don't care?
no,
I think that's
no,
why I gravitated towards you as a doctor because 'cause you're like, "No bullshit." You're like, "Whatever."
yep, no, no, no. I think that sport, this is just a stupid little high school show, but back then when you're 16, I remember the commitment it took, and
Yeah.
the dieting, and, I did like sodium depletion, sodium loading, and all that, everything that Muscle Fitness told me to do, I did
Yeah.
it. And, it's a hardcore lifestyle, whether you're on gear or not. And, extremely, extremely dedicated athletes. It's, it really, in my opinion, should be mainstream. This should be on ESPN. And,
Mhm.
I've always kind of felt that, but,
I think the average viewer doesn't know what they're looking at necessarily, so they can't pick between, 1st and 8th. So it's
sure.
hard for them to it's hard for them to watch, you know what I mean? So how
Yeah.
long did that so 16 years old, what did you weigh there? Do you remember?
I weighed 131 pounds, 132.
And was there ever a show number 2 or no, was that it?
No, it's just that senior year. I trained for it for 9 months. I didn't do it my junior year. I didn't think I was ready. It was kind of fun show because they gave trophies first to third. I took fifth, but then they gave trophies for best back, best arms, best chest. And I was all excited because I won the best back trophy. And, and then, I graduated and went off to the military 2 months later, but it was an experience. But the one thing I wanted to, this is probably boring to you, but it was
No?
very interesting now that, because I've been all into bro chat now, and I'm, trying to predict who's going to win and shit. And, I
Okay.
was all over the Olympia. Really thought Andrew looked great, by the way.
A lot of
Um,
people did.
yeah, but everything's on the internet, and, these bodybuilders are they show themselves working out. You can pull up what they look like 2 weeks out, a month out, 3 months out. We when we were getting ready for this competition, I do not know how this happened, but Lee Haney was in town
Okay.
and doing like a meet and greet at that gym we were at. This is like the main gym. And I bought tickets to go see him. And, I had my little questions written down, like, how do you peak your biceps, or how do should you sodium load? And,
Did you really?
just,
That's awesome.
I was all fucking into it, and I was so excited.
Great.
And one of the rules was you couldn't take a camera. You couldn't take pictures.
Okay.
And some motherfucker in the back snuck a camera in, and he was doing like preacher curls, kind of going over how to do biceps or something. And he kind of pulled up his sleeves. He had a shirt on. He wouldn't take his shirt off, wouldn't show us anything, but he kind of pulled up his sleeves, kind of trying to show us how to, do the exercise appropriately. And then all of a sudden you see this from behind, I see this fucking flash and he just fucking puts down the bar, stands up and points at the dude.
Yeah.
And, the whole room went quiet. I mean, it's fucking Lee Haney. I mean, it's like 380-pound dude. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
"Holy fuck." And they went and got the guy and took him out, and back then
No
it wasn't
way.
digital. It took his film out of his camera and kicked him out.
That's amazing.
But it was so different I don't know what your take on that is, but it seemed back then that like Dorian Yates was like the shadow, right? He would just be
Right.
like absent for
Yeah.
months and all of a sudden he'd show up and fucking kill it.
Right.
But it was kind of like a secret thing back then. They didn't really want to show what they had until they were at the show.
Yeah, you can't really
And
do
I don't
that
know if that's a
anymore.
thing or not, but
It is a thing, but you can't do it anymore because I mean, you can do it, but only so much. Bodybuilders now make majority of their living from sponsors. And sponsors want you to be out there, and sponsors want you to build a fan base, and sponsors want you to be interactive. And if you're a bodybuilder, it's hard to do that with your clothes on all the time.
yeah.
So even when you're prepping, it's encouraged. Like I've never encouraged my athletes to go like, don't be the shadow, but I do want them to post. It's it's not the sponsor encouraging you. As an athlete, it's best for you to be as open as you can be with your audience because you're going to get more attention. And more attention means more followers means bigger contracts, blah 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 down the road, right? So
Yeah.
if you just try and hide away all the time, the internet moves fast, man. They just move on to the next bodybuilder. Like, oh, like, okay, well, let's take Andrew. You've been following bodybuilding recently. So if Andrew says we don't want like before the Olympia, Andrew wasn't talked about quite a lot.
No, I didn't hear anything about him.
Yeah, but it's because he's always covered up. If Andrew was exposing his 24-inch arms every week on the internet on Instagram, everybody be talking about him. So but maybe Andrew doesn't give a shit about sponsors. I think Andrew has like a real job. I don't know. I heard he was like an engineer or something like that. So I don't know if like he cares that he has, you know what I mean? But other guys don't. Other guys live and breathe by their sponsors. So
Mhm.
like, for someone like Andrew, he may be hidden away. For somebody like Nick Walker, he may post a photo every week of his check-in pictures, his update photos, whatever you want to call them. I think what the internet has done basically is take the bodybuilder from up like where nobody can touch them, like the Lee Haneys and the Dorian Yates, like what Lee Haney did in that story, that would never ever fly in today's bodybuilding.
Yeah, I can't imagine it. I mean, you see
Like
some of these guys in the gym and it's like, people that they're really reaching out.
everybody's got a phone, right? So like I went on a tour to Mexico with Samson, and you walk into a seminar, for example, and every single person's got their phone out and they're ready. They're waiting for their photo.
Yeah.
So they form a line, and then I was directing because nobody knows me anymore because I'm old. So I would just direct traffic. I'd be like, "Hey, you come meet Samson, take a picture, move on to the next person. Next, that person would come meet Samson, take a photo, and everybody has their cell phone, and they want their own photo with Samson. So a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
And some bodybuilders missed that time where they could just be just bodybuilders. They didn't have
Yeah.
to worry about doing the social engagements all year round kind of thing.
Right.
So, but I don't know. That's a cool story. It's nice to hear that Lee had that kind of power. He
That
just
dude was
was
big. That fucker was big, man. I was like, "Holy shit." I
that's
just put my
amazing.
notes away and I'm like, "Ugh, I'm just gonna stay quiet." But it was a cool experience seeing him and, that's the closest I got to, an Olympian.
That's still
And
big. Like Lee Haney's, an 8-time Mr. Olympia. I know he's not talked about in the top 5, maybe by some people, but in the grand scheme of bodybuilding, Lee Haney was a massive, massive icon, like to never ever be forgotten. So, that's pretty cool that you got to meet him.
yeah. Yeah, he
And
stuck
now we're
around after that guy got kicked out. He stuck around. I went up and was able to shake his hand, and
did you get the question about the sodium in?
I didn't. I just did what Muscle Fitness told me to do, and it fucking I was walking around. I can't remember how I did it. I just remember the week of the when I was in prep. I don't know what you'd call it, but I was like fucking drinking distilled water for like 3 days,
That was old
and then
school.
I just started loading salt, and it
Yeah.
was just like fucking so nauseating. And when I got on stage, my fucking abs kept cramping. I had to keep pulling it apart, and I'm like, I can only
Uh-huh.
imagine what my electrolytes were, but it was fun. I mean,
That's
it
crazy.
was a lot of fun. Good
Well,
memory.
Dr. Z, I appreciate you sharing some of the stories. I feel bad that I didn't want to dig and like scratch that scar, like scratch that wound too much and like make it bleed, but we got a little bit in there about what you do. I wanted people to get a sense of what a trauma surgeon does and what it's like and kind of what you guys have to go through from your point of view.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. I mean, you're very special to me. I love bro chat. The fact that I'm sitting here looking at you face to face after taking care of you is, just warms my heart. I loved Summer. She was incredible. So this is a big deal for me. I mean, I
Yeah.
just was so thrilled when you asked me to do it. I was nervous. I didn't want to screw up your unscripted thing, but hopefully
No, this is
hopefully it went all
perfect.
right. But
No,
yeah,
no, this fits right in. You're not screwing up anything. This is amazing. This is perfect. Look, this whole unscripted thing is a new project. It's basically just I want to talk to as many different people from as many different walks of life as possible, and this is I think pretty special. I think it's like I said, man, I don't think a lot of people you should give yourself more credit. I don't think very many people come across someone of your stature, and if they do, I don't think they get a chance to really sit down and pick their brain. So, um I appreciate you giving us the hour to you know, just learn a little bit about you.
it was my pleasure, Haas.
All
My
right. Well,
pleasure.
hopefully if you're up for it, maybe you'll come back a different time and give us some more stories.
Absolutely. I'm up for it.
Okay.
As long as you tell Summer I said hello and keep me up to date on how you're doing, then we're all good. I'll come back.
Okay. Trying to tell her I'm trying to tell her not to rat me out when I'm not doing well. That's the problem. But I'll tell her to keep you in touch. I'll tell her to keep you in the talks of what's going on.
I appreciate it, Haas.
Okay, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being a part of it.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thanks, man.